Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's live on Global Resources for Men. We have our first real guest in a while with Bradford Scott Walton. Bradford, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, it's so great to be here. And, we just met recently and then we had such a wonderful conversation. And so it's great to be with you again.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a really fun and interesting conversation. And I am so incredibly excited for you to share the multitude of perspectives that you have in the world as a spiritual masochist. So let's start with that. Like, what the heck is that?
Spiritual masochist? My partner in that and I were sitting around talking one day, and we were just talking about personal development and stuff. And we were talking about how you just it's just this endless cycle of somehow something gets triggered, one of your trigger buddies shows up and triggers something in you, and you're like, that hurts. I don't like that, right? And the only way to have that not continue to hurt is to go into that painful part of you, the part that we're really the most afraid of, right? Because who wants to deal with that crap?
Right.
But if you don't, then it's just going to keep dogging you all the time, right? So I was like, it's like this never-ending cycle. You just have to keep going into the pain. You have to get to a point where you enjoy going into the pain for the pleasure that you get out of handling that pain, right? And I was like, it's like being a masochist. It's like a spiritual masochist. That's exactly what it is.
Oh,
And
it's so good.
that's how it was born. And then so we launched spiritualmasochist.com, and started off kind of as like a lifestyle brand, and with merchandise and stuff that says spiritual masochist on it. But ideally what it is more of a community, and so that people can have a way to identify, not only self-identify, but relate with other people for all the work that they've done, both individually and collectively. And I like having tangible things that represent esoteric things,
Nice.
A way to have something to kind of hold on to, a touchstone, right?
For sure. Hold on a second, just before you go farther, because some people might not necessarily be familiar with the word esoteric. So can you just briefly explain that?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I mean, esoteric to me is like stuff that lives in the energetic field, things that you can't put your hands on, that are more like emotions are esoteric. It lives somewhere, but you can't put your hands on it. You can't put anything on it.
Like love is esoteric?
Yeah, it sure is. I mean, a lot of it manifests physically, but yeah, I mean, the actual thing itself, the concept of it is not, there isn't here's your little love thing, here you go, congratulations, you've graduated and now you get this love trophy that shows that you have love.
Yes, it's like the difference between liking somebody and loving them.
Yeah.
That magical jump that happens when one day you wake up, or a moment happens and you're like,
oh my goodness, I think I love that person.
And then you're either really excited about that, or you're like, this is terrifying. This is such a bad idea.
What's happening to me right now? What do I do with it all?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, so we started that we started that in summer of last year, and we're actually I'm working on a little bit of a rebrand of it. We're going to update the website, and all the merchandise right now just has the Spiritual Masochist logo on it, either just like the words, or I also did like a sacred geometry kind of piece of the logo as well. So they either has all of that or just the words, but we really want to have more stuff that's a little more fun and tongue-in-cheek, because that's really kind of the personality of that, you know, like let's have some fun with it, you know. Also, like with personal growth, there's enough struggle and shit that really sucks and doesn't feel good. So in that as well, like anytime you have an opportunity to like add a little lightness, you know, and be playful with it, it's super beneficial, right? So we're gonna have shirts that say like "Sage me, Daddy," um, and and "I'm your trigger buddy," you know, and stuff like that, where it's like it's like it's playful, you know, and
Sure. Yeah,
I
you can be like, if you can't fall in love with somebody else, at least fall in love with your triggers. They haven't left you for a while.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I guarantee you, if you haven't spent a little time with those on your own, somebody else is going to show up to remind you.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth in that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Man, which I think really beautifully builds us to brings us to the concept of self-worth,
Mm,
which is
yeah,
one of our main topics for this evening.
yeah,
Like
that's a big one.
how do you define your personal worth?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you know, it's interesting because earlier today, I met a couple of women friends at a patio of a wonderful place here in Austin called Cosmic Beer and Coffee. Yeah, and we were just hanging out talking, and they're both wonderful people and really very thoughtful and loving and giving and everything. And we were talking about dating actually, and they're both like late 30s, early 40s, and one of them was talking about how, you know, it seems like a lot of guys around her age like women who are younger, and she was asking me how I feel about that, and I was like, well, I mean, for me, it's all about how you feel about yourself. You know, if I'm meeting a woman for the first time, the thing that it attracts me is how she feels about herself, right? Because that comes through in everything that she does, the way that she moves, the way that she talks, the way that she's dressed, how she's done her hair, everything, all of it. It's all part of the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So that was just like that, just I mean, that just happened a couple hours ago. And it just shows how important that thing is, that part of us is, to take care of. And the more that we spend time and effort in unlocking the parts of us that don't feel good and turning them into places that do feel good, the bigger and better we become as individuals, the more that the world opens up to us, because every person in the world has no option but to respond to you based on the energy that you're bringing to the situation.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, that's, I mean, and everybody's familiar with it, even if you haven't talked about it in those terms, because surely you've come into a room and seen somebody who was like sulking in a corner or whatever, and you don't want any part of that unless you have the level of relationship where you're like, ooh, maybe I should check in on them, right, to see what's wrong,
Yeah,
you know.
there's an interesting situation that happened to me just today. Like I was going to my truck, and there was a young woman. She was on her phone. Her head was down, and she had like a 12-pack of beer in a cardboard box or whatever.
Mhm.
And she was dressed fairly nicely, but she was in a parking garage sitting on the cement. And so I just asked her, and she's right next to my truck. And so I was,
Conveniently.
yeah, I just checked in, and I was just like, hey, like, are you okay?
Mhm.
No. And at first it looked like she thought that I was like, what are you doing there? Right. And I was just like, no. She's like, oh no, like she's like, I live here, like I can move it, it's no big deal. I'm like, no, like as a human, are you
Mhm.
okay?
Right.
You know, and some people could have been like, oh, it's so weird and like gross. Like there's a person next to my vehicle. Like, do I need to be
Mhm.
afraid of them? Especially like with a big stack of like beer in a container next to them.
Right.
Um, and she was like, I really appreciate you checking in.
Mhm.
And she picked up her stuff and she went and she was like, yeah, like as a human, I really appreciate you checking in. And so it's all about like the energy we bring and where another person is on their path as they choose whether or not that energy is going to repulse them or pull
Uh-huh.
them closer out of
Hmm.
empathy, concern, like whatever it is.
For sure, for sure. And I mean, there's a pretty big spectrum as far as situational
Yeah,
experience in that, right? Because there's
100%.
you know but I think also a lot of that, like taking it from your side, you having a level of self-worth that has you in a place that feels secure enough to reach out to that person,
Yeah,
not knowing what to expect the response to be, right? But just like being like, I've got this going on, and it's enough to check in on this person who I see that may not be doing so well,
yeah,
right? So like, and maybe she, maybe in general she has a fantastic sense of self-worth, but she was just happened to be going through a moment
yeah,
where things were not good. I mean, we will maybe never know, right? But yeah, and that's the thing, is like, there is no constant, right, in our lives, right? As far as like, you don't just reach a place where you just keep cruising along and everything is
yeah. You're like,
fantastic, right?
I'm
I'm
good.
Yeah, I filled up my self-worth cup, and now I'm done,
Right.
and I'll never be sad again. um
I hate those
right.
people.
I mean, like, that's not a thing. This whole thing, the whole universe, the earth, all the creatures on it, all the plants, everything is energy, and it all moves on a waveform. And so it's nothing but peaks and valleys, and it can be certainly more challenging to enjoy the valleys than it is the peaks, because we're a lot, we're actually kind of trained to look for the best stuff, to look for ways to be happy, to look for ways to like find fulfillment and enjoyment. And those are absolutely wonderful things to be on the lookout for, and to do work on yourself to find more of. But if you don't embrace the downside, the dark side, all that stuff, you aren't going to get the level, like the farther down you go into the darkness, not into depression, but into the shadow side and the parts of us that hurt, the higher actually your enjoyment and peaks can be, because you're not being saddled and weighed down by the things that you haven't handled,
Yeah,
right? The stuff, the baggage
absolutely.
that you're carrying. I mean, we talk about it all the time. That person brought so much baggage into the relationship. Well, congratulations,
Yep.
everybody has it,
Right. That
you
person
know.
just so triggered and irrational right now. I just don't even want to deal with them. We'd be like, where
Mm,
is grace and compassion and patience? Like,
yeah,
you want everyone to run away from you when you're triggered about something, or do you want somebody to like to hold space with like love and try and help you just process that? Just
for
be there
sure.
with you. You know, that it's not, people don't have to be there to solve your problems when you're triggered, right?
Right, right. And I know, like, for me personally, I have my own process that I go through, and most of the time when I'm going through some sort of thing, I prefer to be alone. I prefer to isolate and not have a lot of communication with people, because I want to get into my thing and feel through it and understand what it's about and why it's happening and what the lesson is, so that I can move through it in the best way possible. That doesn't mean that I won't talk about it at all with other people, but it's, because there's absolute value in talking about it, even if the person there doesn't have really relevant advice to give. But there's great value in just the speaking of it, right? I mean, there have been so many times where just in saying the thing that's going on with me, I've been like, oh, oh, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. There it is, you know. Um, but yeah, and I mean, everybody, and I think part of the point of saying that is that, like, everybody has their own way of moving through the world,
Yeah.
right? Everybody has their best way of learning. Everybody has their best way of coping with things, and finding love, and like all of that stuff. So it's
It can
not
change.
about, Yeah, and it changes over time for sure. So it's not about trying to be perfect in the way that you go into those things. It's about finding the way that feels the best to you, that is the most effective, right? That works
Yeah.
the best for you, so that you can move through it with as much ease and grace as you can, even if it really sucks at the time.
So as a man, like, where did you feel like, at what stage of your development did you really start to shift and form your self-worth? Like, what did that look like for you?
Mm, I think it really well, there was a big shift in my early 30s when I mean, it's kind of they really were tied into, and the first couple were really tied into major life events, right? I got married when I was 28. That caused me to be like, that's a shift. There's a different way of being in that particular scenario. Then a few years later, 32, I have a kid, and so then there's a whole other thing, and there we have so many stories that are built already into our society as the ways that you're supposed to be in a marriage or as a parent,
Right.
and particularly with those two combined. So there's a lot that you have to look at and process and decide which of those things actually resonate with you, which of those things actually feel good and work for you, and toss out the ones that don't, and figure out your own version of it, which
Yeah.
is super important. And so all of that process was really informational and instructional in finding my own self-worth. And then in my 40s, really started kicking in super hard. It was like, okay, 20s were super fun, 30s were great too, and now I'm in my 40s, and it's time to like do some things and make some moves. And I realized that the only way that I can achieve the levels of whatever you want to call it, success, greatness, like the only way I can achieve any of the best things that I want for myself is to be the person who is big enough to handle that, right? So without elevating my sense of self-worth, without doing all of the personal development work and the shadow work and all of that stuff, I'm not going to be able to succeed at the level that I want to, because I don't have the capacity within myself to be the person that it takes to be that guy,
Yeah.
right? That lives at this level.
It's it's a lot
It
to
is. It is. Yeah. And man, I tell you what, particularly after my divorce, I went through like about a 7-year dark night of the soul. It was like a dark 7 year of the soul. And I knew when we were splitting up, I was like, man, I'm about to go through it, because I have to reassess every single part of my life.
yeah.
And there was a lot of freedom in being in that new space. I got to choose a new place to live, and I got to choose what went in my cabinets, and what plates and silverware I use, and what was in my fridge and my pantry and everything. And all of that's great. It's also kind of exhausting,
Yeah.
because those were all things that were just in place already. But it just takes a lot of work, and I just feel like I've just been kind of in constant process, right? Coming into new awarenesses all the time of where I am, this blind spot over here that I didn't know was there before, but now I can see it, and then doing what needs to be done with that, and then continuing on. It's just there is no end to it. Like we were saying before, like you don't just like suddenly fill up your cup of self-worth and then go sit on the couch.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, you don't. And I think it's interesting. I mean, I'm curious sometimes about how people are raised and being able to have different levels of self-worth and how different family groups identify
Hmm.
what gives you worthiness, like what gives you value in the world, right?
Right.
And then as adults, how do we transcend our parents' belief system and find our own value system, right? Because they're not always in alignment.
Yeah, well, and I mean, the parental influence, societal influence, Disney movies, like like honestly, like the whole thing is set up for like, you know, like this. We live in a masculine, energetically dominant world, right?
Yeah.
Which means that the focus and the value of any human is based on what they do and what they can get with what they do, right?
Yeah,
So
it's like when you meet somebody, what's one of the first things that you ask them? What do you do?
yeah, 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 yeah,
Right? Like,
right,
what box are you going to put them in? Like, how can you network and connect with them? It's not
exactly,
necessarily always in a bad way, right? But it's almost
sure,
always like one of the first things that we think about when we engage with the
of
human.
course. I mean, it's the place where the most value is, so
Right.
that's the thing that everybody wants to know, right? And so consequently, we currently have to basically schedule in time to be, right, to meditate or to do yoga or whatever your practice is that allows you to put down the whole doing thing and actually experience what's happening inside you and
Right.
what's happening around you. And for a lot of people, it's really difficult. Even, I mean, A, it's difficult to schedule that in the first place, and then B, even if you schedule it in and you start doing it, it's part of the reason why people struggle with meditation is because they're still wanting to do. Their brain is still trying to figure out how to do things, and that's not being,
Yeah,
right.
you're just like so
That's,
hardwired for it. It just
yeah, right. And if you just take time to be, even if you're not meditating, say you're just going to go uh sit in the grass in a park or something, you're just going to go hang out, and not going to do anything, you're just going to
leave
hang
your
out.
phone in the car.
Yeah, well, like a lot of times there is shame and guilt that we feel because we're not doing anything. We should be doing something, and there's still, like, I've still got this massive to-do list over here that I haven't checked off, and like I'm just like wasting time out here in the grass. What is it doing for me? Nothing. Like I mean,
How dare you take time to feel fully present?
what?
What is
So
going
rude.
on?
What is that? Oh, get out there and do something, damn it.
Don't be such a lazy Bess. Um, yeah, no, it's a really interesting thing, which brings us to the concept that you had that I just totally loved in regards to men honoring the feminine energy within themselves, because there's this balance of balance, that's a loose term, isn't it? Of masculine and feminine energy within us all, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have a concept that I haven't heard necessarily before. And so I would love for you to share that
Okay.
on
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
platform and with the world.
Of course, of course. Yeah. Yeah. So, gosh, I guess it was probably about 4 years ago now. I think I was just hanging out in my apartment. And like my guides that I call my sky homies, right? Because we're pals. Um, all of a sudden this voice comes in, and at the time I was really focusing on being a coach for men. So this voice came and said to me, every man in the world treats the feminine outside him the exact way he feels about the feminine inside him, and that is the root cause of everything that does not work well or feel good on the planet. And I was struck by it for sure, and it just rang so true to me because it speaks to our pursuit of and our value levels that we have in the masculine, and the doing and achieving, and the suppression oppression of the feminine, and our state of being and our connection to ourselves and to source energy, God, whatever you want to call it. And so I think for a lot of men, and it's actually true for most people, it just kind of like it kind of shows up a little bit differently for men and women. But like for most guys, um, you're operating with this elevated masculine that is compensating for a compromised feminine, right? This is
Right.
this hurt, it's this hurt place inside that you can't allow anybody to see or feel or touch, because like you can't risk being weak, you can't risk being vulnerable, because we all know, we've all seen a million stories of how that plays out, and it ranges from little comments to physical beatings and death, depending, because like if every man treats the feminine outside him the exact way he feels about the feminine inside him, that means the more fucked up this is, the more fucked up things are that he does to the feminine outside him. And where does the feminine show up? Well, it turns out it's everywhere. It's in every person. Every person has masculine and feminine energy. They get expressed at different levels. Doesn't matter what levels they're at, but and it's nature. It's in everything, right? I mean, look at the way we treat the environment. Look at the giant piles of trash in the ocean. Look at the way we poison our riverways, and like the freaking rainforest, in the Amazon. Like it just like, I mean, how many examples do you need of the feminine being treated terribly, right? And women take a huge amount of that on the chin, right? In
Yeah.
so many different ways. But it also extends to the LGBTQ
Yeah.
community, and like it's just, it's the most pervasive issue on the planet. And if that one thing is flipped, if it's turned into a different way of treating and valuing both of these energies, the whole thing changes practically overnight,
Yeah.
because the thing with like talking about these things being balanced is, it's not about being a masculine dominant person, right? Energetically, that's cool, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with feminine dominant. Also, no big deal. Maybe you're both in the middle. Who knows? Like, and those energies fluctuate
Yeah. You can
all
like,
the time anyway, right?
like,
Based on the situation and what you're doing, who you're talking to, how much emotion is involved, whether you need to act really quickly. So it's not about where they're set. It's about how we feel about those energies. It's about the value that we place on them.
yeah.
If we're dealing with a severely undervalued and painful feminine energy, well, that's going to dramatically affect how the masculine acts. And so the more that that gets lifted up, the more that it's embraced and treated as a place of strength and power and worthiness, the easier everything becomes, because now the state of being that you're in causes you to have actions that are loving and generous and kind and supportive, as opposed to mean or physical, abusive, or any of those things that not only make you feel worse, but it makes other people feel terrible, right? And then the energy of that comes back and makes the feminine energy within you feel shitty all over again.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I was just thinking about how if you truly have a mature masculine energy about you, are you able to do that and also be honoring the feminine in a mature way within you? Because I don't believe that there is toxic masculinity or toxic femininity. I believe that there
Yeah.
is immature masculinity and immature femininity, and mature masculinity and mature femininity. And when we have immature action, that's when toxic behaviors occur.
Mm-hmm.
But the energy, like, there's nothing wrong with being masculine. Like,
Right.
this is really
Yeah.
important for
Well,
people
and also, just to be clear, like we're talking about the energetic level, which lies beneath the like gender expression level, right? We're not talking about masculine and feminine physical expression, or where you are on the gender spectrum. Though that's a whole other layer. And also all of that is okay wherever you are on the spectrum,
Yeah.
however it feels best for you to express yourself. Fuck yes. Um, but with like the energy of it, and I feel similarly to you as to like, my thing is like, look, there's the masculine energy and there's the feminine energy. They're present throughout the entire universe. The only difference that we experience is like, and there are a lot of people who use like divine or toxic or elevated or shadow, like all these modifiers of these energies. And it's like, well, they're actually the exact same energies all the time, but the way that people feel about them internally governs how they get expressed.
Right.
And when you don't feel good about them internally, the way that they are expressed is shitty, and so we call it toxic or immature, or how, I mean, because we want to be able to, we love labels, right? We love to be able to say, oh, well, this belongs right over here in this box. I've got this box over here for that one. But it's, I mean, it's the same energy all the time, everywhere. It just shows up, either in a really lovely, beautiful way or a super shitty way, and all the places in between.
For
But
sure. How old is your son now?
he will be 21 in July. Yeah. Yeah.
Like you have a really beautiful relationship with your son and how you support him.
Yeah. He's such an awesome guy. This is like, I love him so much. He is trans, and I put out a video a couple of months ago about my experience of his transition, and it was really interesting to be a parent and see him go. And I mean, I just like, one of my favorite things about him is how self-aware he is and the courage that he has to be himself. It's just so freaking impressive. Because at 11, it was like shortly after my ex-wife and I had separated, he sat us both down individually and told us that he was bi, and I was like, okay, well, is that by experience or preference? And he said preference. And I was like, all right, cool. I don't really care. Not that I don't care, but I'd like, it doesn't matter
Right.
to me who you're attracted to. I think it's incredibly amazing, and let's please continue having this availability of this kind of dialogue. Like, that's who I always want to be for you, is someone that you can come to and talk to about really sensitive personal issues. And then the next year he was gay, and then the next year he was agender, and then the next year he was like, I'm trans. We're going to go with he, him, his pronouns, and I'm identifying as male. And and then I had to go through my own grieving process for the loss of my daughter, so that I could really support my son, because I have like one main job as his dad, and that is to love him in a way that he understands, and that he understand, and to have him in that understanding know that there is nothing he can do to ever fuck that up.
That's
Right.
beautiful.
I always got you. I'm here. Right. And then, I mean, the only thing that I really want for him is to be the fullest expression of himself. And so the more that he does that, the happier it makes me. I mean, he's doing the best he's ever been, and it just lights me up inside to no end. I'm just like so proud of him and the things that he's doing and who he's becoming. It's wonderful, and it also doesn't hurt that he has almost the same sense of humor that I do, and speaks with the same kind of intonations and stuff. So he and I, when we get together, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous how much fun we have and how much laughter there is. But we also talk about, how things feel and what's going on and how, what we're dealing with. And also, to his credit, it's not me just asking him how he's doing. He also asks me how I'm doing, right? Which is super cool. Like, he's like, we'll be talking about him, and he's like, so wait, well, like, what's going on with you, Dad? Like, how are you doing? What's happening in your world? It's like, that's wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really beautiful. What advice could you give parents in regards to, like, if they're struggling, or if they have a child that is trans, or going through the different aspects of that experience?
Well, I mean, first, just generally as being a parent, one of the first or one of the earliest things I realized is that there's no way that I am not going to fuck this up. Like, you know, like even if I come from absolute pure love 24/7 and everything I do is the most generous, kindest, most heartfelt thing, I have no control over how my kid perceives anything I say or do. And you can bet that at some point, even if I'm being the most loving person I can be, he's going to be like, what the hell was that?
Right.
Right. So I was like, okay, well, we can just throw being perfect out the window. Let's just go ahead and throw that out and let's just be as good as possible. Right. And always just keep coming from love as much as possible, because then we can, regardless of what comes up, we can find our way to the best solution for everybody, right, without causing a whole big stink and, you know, making it go on for too terribly long. And then as far as like being a kid, having a kid who is, you know, in the LGBTQ plus world, like, man, it's so hard for them. It's such a struggle. You know, my kid went through such intense depression and anxiety, and I was like, dude, listen, I am I'm a straight white man, and I hated being a teenager. Like, not that I hated it, but like it is hard.
Hard.
It's
Sucks.
hard. Would I sign up to go do that again? Hell no.
Nope.
No. Fuck that shit, man.
Yeah.
I like, you know, like, no, I don't want to do that again. So like to be going through all of that we all experienced, and then on top of that dealing with being trans or being gay or being a lesbian, wherever they are in that spectrum, that's a whole added extra level of complexity and emotion and fear and all kinds of stuff. So the like, I just kept telling my kid over and over again, I love you, I've got you, like, you know, I'm here for you. Like, there's nothing you can do to mess this up. And I know this is so hard. It's like the hardest part you're ever going to experience. I promise you, it's going to get better, but it's going to suck for a while, but you're going to find your way. And I know you will, because I see you and I know what lives inside you. I can feel you.
Yeah.
So rest into that as much as you can, even, you know, even though I know it's not going to be fun for a while, you know. So it requires a lot of compassion,
Yeah.
a ton of compassion. Like, you just, you know, there are things that they will go through and they will do and they will say that you will not understand, particularly if you're a straight person. If you're a cisgendered person, you're not going to get it. Like, I will never understand what it's like to feel foreign in my body, you know, to have that kind of body dysphoria, to be walking around in the world and have people misgender me, right? Based on how I actually feel about myself. I don't know what that's like.
Yeah.
And I never will. But
that brings us to like another topic for today, which is like body image, because there's like so much shame for people in general. Like there's like women struggle a lot with body image. I know that men struggle in a different way with body image, and like how society's like, well, you need to be 6 feet tall with broad shoulders and lots of muscles and a really big dick. You know, like
yeah,
honestly,
I mean, who's going to complain about that?
right?
You know, right?
But like,
but also,
on the flip side of that, though, I've talked to guys who have really large penises and it's too big and it's a problem. And like, I had a dear friend, and the first girl he ever slept with, he put in the hospital.
oh no.
Like honestly, like the poor guy, like
Yeah.
as a virgin, like trying to have a natural experience. He
Sure.
checked in with this girl who's also a virgin, and he just like completely like broke her open.
Yeah.
And like it was just like how traumatizing that is for people, and like
Sure.
the different experiences, and people just don't like really talk about guys in like this situation with their penises. Like we talked about it on my last Global Men's Summit, and it's just like we don't talk about body image for men, and like the guys that are short and scrawny versus guys that are like super tall, and like
Sure.
the guy that's super tall, everybody's like, do you play basketball, you know? I like, it's just, it's an interesting thing, and I think it's important for us to be able to like open up that conversation. And then your son being trans, like what body image is like what you just said, like
Mm-hmm.
walking through life feeling like it isn't your body,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's a body
Sure.
image thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I mean, I have body image things too, you know, and like I'm 6 feet tall and I have broad shoulders. I don't have a huge dick, but you know, it's not also a micro penis. But when I was 14, I was on a swim team and I came out of the pool area and I saw a group of girls that were all great friends of mine sitting around in a circle on the grass. And I walked over there, and as I was walking up, none of them saw me, but I heard one of them say, well, Brad doesn't have anything down there. And it was like a giant knife being stabbed into my heart. And I was like, well, I guess it's over for me. Like, what is the point? You know, like I want nothing more than to, at some point, you know, have sex and have like that level of intimacy with women. But now, well, I'm clearly handicapped, you
Mm.
know. What I didn't realize until many years later, I spent probably, God, 25 years thinking that I just like my dick was small and it wasn't worthy, you know. And it sucked. It sucked, you know. Every time you have a new partner, like being like, oh God, here we go, she's gonna hate my dick, you know. um the good thing that happened was I was like, well, if my dick isn't going to be satisfactory, then I'm going to need to be really fucking good at everything else. I'm gonna be the best lover in every other way, so that I, you know, because like I'm not just gonna shut it down. I'm not gonna just say, okay, now, well, I guess no sex for me this life. Bummer, you know, like, you know. But what I realized many years later was that I was 14.
Yeah.
I hadn't gone through puberty. I still had a boy dick. I didn't have a man dick, you know. Later I got a man dick. It's fine. You know, it works great. You know,
Yeah.
like you know, it's like whatever, you know. And then also like it wasn't until I was like 32, like for most of my life, you know, up until I was 32, I was really skinny. I was just a freaking beanpole. And then when I turned 32, all like seemingly overnight, it was the weirdest thing. I like woke up one day and my body had filled out. All of a sudden I had this man body and I had muscles and stuff. And I was like, my whole family was like, what happened to you? And I'm like, I don't know. I woke up this way,
You're like,
you
I don't know,
know.
but it's
I
great,
woke up like this. Um and you know, and since then I've had the great good fortune of having a metabolism and a genetic setup that allows me to subsist mainly on burgers, tacos, and pizza, and not really have to do anything to maintain a decent body shape, you know. And um like I just actually got invited to uh, be on stage for like I guess kind of a cabaret type show, very like very sexy, you know. Like what they want me to do is come on stage and carry a woman off stage who has been tied up, right? Like shibari rope stuff, right?
Cool.
So yeah, and they want me to not be wearing a lot, right? and and they're like, you know, we think your body is great and we would love to see you do that on stage. And I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, sure, I'll do it.
Sounds
I'm gonna do a lot more working out before that happens because, you know, I mean, let's look the best we can. But like, you know, I mean, I in general, like I think of myself as having a decent body, but I'm always still surprised when somebody says something affirmative about that, right? When somebody is like, oh my gosh, you look so good or whatever, in part because I just like, that's not a big focus for me.
Yeah.
And so I move through the world kind of like in a sort of unassuming way, but also like with a lot of confidence, like I have a sense of ownership of who I am, and I like to move through the world with ease and grace, and I like for things to have lots of flow to it, and so I try to move that way in all the ways, right?
And that's why you have great style.
How I walk, and everything, it's the same. It's all part of the same thing, and all of it comes from how we feel about ourselves internally, right?
Yeah.
That's how all of it gets expressed externally. And but like, I mean, the whole body issue thing, and I mean, I don't know a single person that doesn't have something,
Yeah. Yeah. No,
you know
absolutely. Which brings us to our last subject. It's amazing. It's already like 6:32 for you.
My goodness.
I know it went by so fast. And Facebook apparently thought that our conversation about penises was too taboo and cut our live, but we're still recording. So
Oh no.
fine. And so we're coming to the last part, which is in regards to STDs, sexually transmitted diseases, and how
Yes.
when we're connecting with sexual partners, how we provide a safe, non-judgmental container to offer that information if we have an STD, or to create a safe space for our partners who are vulnerably, respectfully, transparently sharing that information before sexually engaging.
Yeah. And I mean, it's so super important to have that level of honesty and transparency about that kind of thing. I fortunately have never had an STD myself, but I have had I've had several lovers and several potential lovers who have had herpes or other issues, um, and I have always been super grateful for them being upfront about that. Sometimes I don't want to engage in that, and sometimes I feel okay with it. It depends a lot on that person, how they communicate it, how they feel about it, whether it's a really threatening thing for them, whether at the time they're still very emotionally compromised over it, because it can be
Oh
a
yeah.
pretty traumatic thing, right? It's not, I mean, nobody is like, yay, I got an STD.
They're like, oh,
Right?
they don't come home and they're like, oh my gosh, you guys, the best thing happened to me today.
I got the clap.
I got herpes. Super
Yeah.
great. Because like some stories just get boring, but you get to tell that one over and over for the rest of your life. Like
I know, right?
and it's like a choose your own adventure, because every new person that you talk to about it, you just have no idea how they're going to react. So
Sure. Yeah. And just spin the wheel.
you're just like, wee, what's it going to be? Are they going to be like a dramatic asshole? Are they going to get ghost me? And then they're going to be like, oh, it's fine, and then like disappear, and then tell their friends,
Sure.
like, so this slut. You just never know, right?
Yeah.
Because there can be so much slut shaming that accompanies the concept of STDs.
Sure. And I've also had like situations happen where I find out that one of my lovers has had a scare around herpes or has herpes, and then it's also then my responsibility to share that information with any other lovers that I might have at the time, right? Because it's important for that level of transparency, and to make sure that I get tested if there is any question, and be honest about how all of that's working. Because I mean, the last thing I want to do is add any extra trauma, particularly sexually, for anybody that I care enough about to have sexual intimacy with, right? I mean, my thing is like, casual sex is okay, but like that's not really my jam. That's like, this is why I don't do dating apps, because I need to feel you. I need to have some sort of energetic resonance that says we should do something naked together, you know? Because if it's not there, I don't, you know, I'm not, I mean,
Like it's mechanical.
yeah, I mean, you know, there's plenty of ways to get off, and really, I mean, in general, if you really need some sex, there's plenty of ways to get it, you know, without resorting to, you know,
Prostitution.
yeah, or violence, or, you know, any kind of
Yeah.
shit like that. You know, because like,
That it's just one of those things.
I know, well, but like, you know, aside from the small percentage of the population that is asexual, or so old that they don't really give a crap anymore about sexuality, just about every other person on the planet is horny, right? And also the children. It's age bracketing. Not definitely not trying to include kids here, but
Yeah, you
yeah.
know, but I mean, like that's a different conversation. As children like are exploring themselves, you know, and like
Yeah, of course.
like
Of course.
creating
Yeah.
spaces, like not shaming the sexual experience while
Hmm.
also creating a protective like conversation of how that's appropriate to engage and not engage, right? Because
Yeah.
masturbation can start super young
Hmm.
for some kids, and the internet, unfortunately, like there's an insane amount of stuff that kids can gravitate towards too, and
Sure.
trying to protect that the sanctity and innocence is super important. But also like the beautiful relationship with your son I so appreciate is the ability to have those what could otherwise be like really awkward conversations,
Hmm.
including if there's a parent and their kid has been sexually active at any age, you know, teenager or like or even in their 20s, whatever, it's still your kid. It doesn't
Right.
matter how old they are. And they come to you and they're just like, hey, I'm scared or I'm really upset. This thing just happened.
Hmm.
I got an STD, even if it's something curable like
Yeah.
chlamydia or gonorrhea, or if
Yeah.
it's something that's not curable like herpes and AIDS and like
Hmm.
HIV. Like, how do you create that safe space for conversation to support your kid and like take a pause to be able to emotionally regulate enough to not freak out when they need you to be solid?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we've had to broach some difficult stuff around sexuality, and not around STDs, but just like, I mean, it's 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 a tricky, like, sexuality, because we treat it as like this, you know, dirty place, in so many instances, you know, and particularly like dicks, like, I mean, like, don't, you know, like, either I don't know, like, there's so many people who are so freaked out by seeing a penis,
It's just
you know, like,
another
ooh,
part
it's
of your
gross,
body. Like
ugh,
so
you
it
know.
gets so much negative press. Like the
Mm,
penis gets so much negative press, and it's a part of a human being's body. It's a part of a man's body. It's a part
yeah.
of somebody like if they're trans and they're just like they naturally have a penis, but they might also have breasts. Like it's just part of your body.
Hmm.
And when society is putting so much shame and negative attention on penises, like you are naturally shaming a part of a human being's body.
Yeah.
That's not okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And instead of just like differentiating between like behaviors that are not ethical because they're damaging other people versus just a body, and like
Mhm.
how much negative energy just societally we're like that person's being a dick,
Right.
just that, you know, like
Yeah.
just that, and like and it's so many of us just casually throw it around, but when you
Oh yeah.
think about it energetically and think about the intention and the insinuation that just like having a dick is a bad thing,
Hmm.
where does that even come from? Like,
Yeah. Well, we also call people pussies,
yeah, exactly. And
you know?
we call people pussies, exactly. And thank you so much for bringing up that point. And like that there's some sort of like negative like weakness about that. And then like
Yeah.
for us as women, we're just like, are you kidding? Those things get pummeled. Have you tried to birth a baby? There's so much pain and toughness that goes like the flip, like how that like all like pussies go through a lot more than dicks do.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, look, I don't know a single woman who has been like, well, I broke my vagina. It's broken. You know?
like there are times when like our vaginas feel like broken and like we
Sure,
have like pain with sex with different
sure, sure,
things
sure,
that are,
sure.
because there
Yeah,
actually are a lot of women that have pain with sex, which brings us to another point that
true.
guys be mindful of and having like grace and compassion that like
Mm,
when women are having issues with their vaginas, like how to be nurturing and
yeah.
patient. And there are a lot of different ways for you to climax if that's what you're interested in, or if
Hmm.
you're genuinely interested in your partner and they're just like, it hurts, stop and figure out why. And
Yeah.
like trusting that like the woman that you're with isn't just like trying to be like, I don't want to deal with you anymore and I don't know any other way to communicate that other than like I'm actually in pain.
Right. Well, and I mean, if you are showing up being authentic and really being open to the situation and paying attention to your partner, right? And like really like listening to what's happening to her with her physically and emotionally and energetically, then like if she says that things aren't working, it's time to stop, right? If it's just because that one thing isn't working, well, and she wants to continue and wants to find pleasure in another way, then go for that, right?
Right.
Maybe that's the key to having the other thing work better that wasn't working before. I mean, there have been so many times where I have been like, I just stopped in the middle and been like, are you okay? Like,
And on
because
behalf of all women, thank you for that.
yeah, because like sometimes it's like I'm not here to use your vagina as a fleshlight. Like I'm here for both my pleasure and for your pleasure, and actually I'm more focused on your pleasure because it all feels great to me. So if I can focus on your pleasure and I can help you feel good regardless of whether you get to orgasm or not. I mean, it would be fantastic if there were a lot of orgasms were involved, because that's exciting. But like if it also just
For everybody.
feels really great and it's super enjoyable, then that's great too.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I just that's how it is for me sexually. I want my partner, whoever that is, to be enjoying themselves, to be in it with me emotionally, energetically, physically. Like I want to feel the whole thing and I want to feel how you're feeling. And I want, if anything is ever not working, I want you to tell me that. And if there's something else that you want that's more than or less than, also tell me, because I'm a variable speed lover, right?
I got
Like,
lots of buttons. Which one do you
yeah,
want?
it's not just like it's not it's not just jackhammer time, like,
Yeah. No,
so,
it's just
and
at the end of the day,
because teamwork makes the dream work, right?
teamwork makes the dream work. That's right. And, at the end of the day, everybody, like, it's really just about communication, healthy boundaries, and genuinely caring about the person that's in front of you,
Yeah.
be it sexually or platonically. Like,
Hmm.
that's just the bottom line.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
let go of the expectations, let go of the
Hmm.
ego, let go of like how you feel like things are supposed to look in porn, and just
Hmm.
be present with your partner and ask them what they want. Tell
Yeah.
them what you want. Gentlemen, we want to know what you want.
Hmm.
If we haven't already figured it out and are great at it, please just communicate it to us so that we can further pleasure both of ourselves.
Right.
Um, it's like, and I know that can be super awkward, and sometimes you don't necessarily know what you want, and creating a space of like genuine care where you can explore what that might be is really healthy.
Hmm.
And finding people that you feel safe to be able to have those experiences with and communicate it with. And that's what I think like part of the thing that's so difficult these days about finding people on Tinder or wherever else that you find people for these
Hmm.
hookups is that most people aren't good at creating connection even spontaneously like that on a level of which you can experience like genuinely like really great sex, um,
Right.
because they're just like, I don't know how to create that safety net for us to have the important conversations.
Sure. Yeah. And when that is when you can be in that place, then it allows for a lot of really fun exploratory stuff. Also, like one of the things that I've been telling guys for quite a while now is like, look, if you are the kind of guy who is and has dealt with this shit enough that in your presence women feel safe, she will show you more sexually than you can ever get her to do by asking her, because she wants to, because she feels like she can trust you and she can be all that she wants to be sexually, and that will blow your mind.
Yes. Yeah, feeling safe definitely like opens people up to be more vulnerable to try things otherwise, in an authentic fashion versus just having to ask, and being able to read the nonverbal cues that somebody's giving you.
Yeah.
Is really important. And this has been an amazing conversation, but we're getting really close to the time for the women's group, because gentlemen, while I think this conversation is super important for you, I also have your back by having the same conversation with the ladies, and also having theirs, because it's about both people being able to be open with the conversation. So Bradford,
Absolutely.
where can these gentlemen find you for future conversations and your podcast?
Oh yeah. So I mean, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Bradford Scott Walton. I also have my website, bradfordscottwalton.com. It's like there's a theme. And you can check out spiritualmasochist.com if you want information on that. And then also I'll be launching my podcast soon called Flipping the Paradigm, which is all conversations around the masculine and feminine energetic equation, how that affects us individually, societally, collectively, and how we get to a place where those energies feel balanced and everybody feels better and things work a lot better. So you can go to flippingtheparadigm.org there. It's just a simple one-page thing with a little email sign-up thing, so you can be notified when that goodness starts doing its
I
thing.
signed up. Support your
Thanks.
friends.
Yeah.
Bradford, it's been a true pleasure to get to connect and have these like really powerful conversations with you today. So thank you for your time and your friendship.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so great to be here and share all this stuff with you. And I look forward to lots more conversations, both in your group and in person, or virtually, since we're pals now.
We are.
And,
I'll come through Austin.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
All
and
right.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Until next time. Bye.